What's up everyone? How's it going? Just finished with my workout, feeling pretty swole. I'm not completely wasting away, even though I haven't been in the gym in like 6 weeks or 7 weeks. But I wanted to make a video on how to gain muscle and lose fat at the same time. So the reason why I wanted to make this video a top priority is that about half of my clients want to do this. They want to gain muscle and lose fat at the same time. Maybe they're skinny fat, maybe they're just fat and they want to gain muscle while losing fat. But this is a lot of people that have this as a goal. So obviously everyone is very individual, but there are some factors that definitely make it easier to gain muscle while losing fat. So today we're going to go through those factors and see how you can optimize your training. So the best way to think of this is that you have fat and you have muscle. These are really the two main areas that your energy can go. So anytime you eat food, it could go to fat, it could go to muscle. Where it goes, fat or muscle, is going to be dependent on a lot of factors, which we'll go through today. So the first factor, and a really important one, is going to be your training in the gym. So every time you do resistance training, you are shifting more of that energy towards muscle growth because it needs to repair, recover, get bigger. This is why after you train, your metabolism is actually raised because your body needs more energy to build all this muscle. In fact, studies have shown resistance training will make you lose more fat than if you don't do resistance training, because your body can use the fat that you have and use that energy to build muscle. So you'll actually lose more fat and build muscle if you do resistance training. And this is part of the reason why focusing on the scale alone is pretty stupid, because there's a lot of places that the energy could go. So how do you optimize your training? Basically do compound movements like the squat, deadlift, bench press, overhead press, pull-ups, rows. You can do a few machines, but stick to the free weights as much as possible. You're also going to want to progressively overload. If you're not getting stronger, then you're not going to build muscle in most cases. Make sure you're training with enough volume. You're doing enough sets per week per muscle group. Make sure you're doing enough frequency. You are training often enough per muscle group per week. Make sure you're training with sufficient intensity. The weight on the bar is enough. Make sure that your RPE is also enough. You're actually putting an effort into your training. I actually did a full video about this, and I'll link it in the description. But suffice to say, your training is going to be your biggest weapon when it comes to shifting more calories over to muscle instead of fat. If you're still not sure how to set stuff up, there are templates in my book, and I'm also happy to write you a customized, personalized plan. Shameless plug! Alright, now that you've got your training all set up, the next factor is going to be your sleep. Now, getting enough sleep is absolutely critical. If you're not getting probably 7 or 8 hours of sleep, you're probably going to lose muscle when you're cutting. It's just, there's no replacement for it, and it has to be done. Now, if you say, oh, Jeff, I gained muscle and lost fat on 6 hours of sleep per night. Yeah, there's some exceptions. But for most people, you're going to want 7.5 to 8 hours, if not more. I think, 9 or 10 hours, if you can fit it in, is even better. Most professional athletes, they sleep 7 or 8 hours per night, but then they also have like a 1 or 2 hour nap. I think Roger Federer slept like 12 hours a day. So yeah, sleep. Do it. Alright, the third factor is going to be your protein. Getting in more protein is generally going to be good for body composition, but you don't want to go super high. I would say about 1.6 grams per kilo, which is roughly 0.75 grams per pound. You can go a little bit higher. You can go to that 1 gram per pound. It's fine. You won't really get any benefit from it, but it might make you more satiated, more full, and it might reduce your other, cheesecake intake. So your total protein intake is very important, but you also want to be sure that it's sort of spread throughout the day. You cannot store protein. You can store it in your muscles, but you can't really store it like you can fat or you can carbs. So you want to spread that protein out throughout the day. So if you're getting in 150 grams, I would just do 30, 30, 30, 30, 30. 3 meals, 2 stacks, something like that. The type of protein also matters. So if you're getting in a non-animal based source of protein, then you might want to get a little bit more because it's going to be lower in essential amino acids. So if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, then you might want to consider getting in slightly more total protein. There was also another study that compared casein and whey. Casein was actually much more effective for muscle growth and for fat loss. So if you have the choice, I would actually recommend casein over whey. Alright, the fourth factor is going to be your calories. So your calories is going to be important. In order to gain muscle and lose fat, I would be in a slight deficit. So you don't want to be in a surplus because you'll gain fat. You don't want to be in a huge deficit because then you won't gain muscle. But if you're in maybe a 300 to 500 calorie deficit, you can lose fat while building muscle. You can also do it if you're just exactly at maintenance. And number 5 is going to be your patience. So you're probably not happy to hear that, but if you want to do both of these at the same time, you really need to be accurate and track everything and be very controlled and disciplined. And it's going to take longer. If you really want to recomp, gaining muscle, losing fat, it's going to take longer than if you picked one of those. And so it really does require more patience to see this whole process through. One thing to keep in mind is that the higher your body fat percentage and the more of a beginner you are to lifting weights, the easier this is going to be to do. So if you're 40 or 50% body fat and you've never lifted a weight in your life, this is going to be very easy. If you don't build muscle and lose fat at the same time, your training plan is horrible. On the other hand, I'm a little bit more advanced and I'm a little bit leaner. Not super lean right now, but I'm leaner. It's going to be very difficult for me to do that. So be realistic with your starting point and see if it's actually going to be possible or feasible or smart to try to do both at the same time. Like if you're very, very, very fat, it's not like a mean term, it's just if you have a lot of body fat, you probably don't even want to worry about muscle. Just go to the gym, work hard, but the focus should be on the diet. Likewise, if you're skinny, but you have a little bit of fat, you shouldn't worry about like if you'll get a little more fat. I mean, if you're 12% body fat and you're like, oh my god, my abs, they're sort of like a little blurrier than last week, and you're skinny and you have no muscle, but you want to gain muscle, just accept some fat gain and bulk properly. Just because it's going to be much more efficient in the long term than trying to put your ass on 2 horses. Like if your ass is big enough, you can go with 2 horses. But if you're small, just 1 horse for you. A 6th factor is actually if you like my videos, it actually becomes easier to gain muscle. So there you go. And subscribing is really good for fat loss, actually. Not many people know that, but it's, it's true. So if you could go ahead and do both, that's all you really need to do. Like training, not that important. Goodbye.